All right, Big Kev here, Big Kev's World. I'm joined by Matt Jones and
Xavier Mykeals.
How'd this guy get on the stream? I thought it was supposed to be you and me.
all right. You know that I'm training to become a wrestler, getting back in the ring again. I'm doing my thing. You know, me and Mel were free agents, and I know you and Kate sent me this little lovely package here, and I appreciate that because y'all want me to join the Outliers and stuff. And well, I'm going to answer Nate's question here because Nate sent me $2.5 million in my bank account. So Nate, I appreciate it. I'm going to buy a bunch of cars, but I'm not going to join your group. Now, Superstar Xavier, I have to say, man, I appreciate the ringside tickets to WrestleMania.
Hell yeah, bro! Got to share the wealth. All my connections are your connections.
And he took me and Mel out to a wine and dine place in California. So we appreciate it.
Right here. All right, I see how it is.
So that's how he got this. So that was my way of saying, okay, well, since you did that, you can come on the show. But how about we get into some wrestling discussion, guys? Save the fights for later.
All right, Xavier. If I'm forced to have to deal with you for the next however many minutes, I'm gonna be able to do it.
Yeah, it'll be easy. I have 2 ex-wives. I can deal with you.
Yeah, well, you ain't seen nothing yet.
So the first ever comment we got is the wrestling show a huge fan of yo-yos by Joshua.
Yo, it's the wrestling show. That's all I got to say about that.
You know what? Monday Night Wars, the Attitude Era. What do you guys? What was y'all's first memory of the Attitude Era? I'm gonna start with you, Matt. What was your first memory of it?
My first memory of the Attitude Era was never wanting to watch wrestling again because I realized that HBK was not coming back after WrestleMania and that Stone Cold was going to be the champ, and I was forced to have to deal with it. And I was like, you know what? The Attitude Era is going to suck. Triple H can't run a faction. And then I switched it over to WCW. That was how I started the Attitude Era. You know, I was not happy with the flip of the title there.
What about you, Superstar?
So in my mind, the Attitude Era started a little bit before the belt switch at WrestleMania 14, but I understand what Matt's getting at because even I was Chaos and I were huge WWE guys. We were not WCW guys, but that night after WrestleMania was very awkward. Like I didn't think WWE was going to survive when they had Triple H, then bring out X-Pac because X-Pac debuted that night, and starting DX, and we were like, oh god. DX was so awesome with Shawn, Chyna, and Triple H. How is this going to work? But yeah, WCW for the beginning of the Attitude Era really had it going on.
I think what really brought out to me with the Attitude Era is when Steve Austin won the King of the Ring and he did that promo saying Austin 316 says, I just whooped your ass. And when that momentum of Austin started going, that's when we started seeing Shawn change. And then they had Bret Hart become the heel with the Canadian, with the Hart Foundation. And we all know the screw job in Survivor Series. The Survivor Series screw job. Let me ask you, Matt, and I know you run the wrestling show. If you were in Vince's shoes, what would have done that night?
That's a good question, bro. And like I've always agreed with Vince McMahon in getting the belt off of Bret Hart, especially if he's there. You know, personally, I think that there was more to the screw job than what everybody else thinks. I do believe that as the promoter, Vince McMahon knew what he was doing, and Bret Hart also knew what he was doing, and they didn't have no film crew there getting the perfect shot of Vince's black eye for nothing. You know, I believe it was all scripted in. It was filmed and shot the way it was supposed to be done, and it went off without a hitch. From a director's point of view, it all looked beautiful, and they made lots of money off of it, and we're still talking about it today. I think it was done perfectly.
What about you, Xavier? What would you have done in that situation?
Well, there's an old adage: if you don't do business, the promoter is going to do business for you. So I agree with Vince's decision. I see where Matt's coming from, how everything fit in perfectly. The only thing that I don't know if I believe it was a work or not is wrestlers are like housewives. So it's almost impossible to keep a secret. So unless everybody involved is getting still millions of dollars, I don't know how somebody as egotistical as Bret would still say it's a work. That's my only thing. But Matt's right. Like everything, the camera guy was in the exact right spot at the right moment to film all that wrestling with shadows shit. So like I don't know what to think about that.
Bret Hart also in his documentary says that when he was in school, he would lie to all of the kids and go to his deathbed saying that wrestling was real. So if anybody was going to hold a kayfabe lie for the rest of his life, it was going to be Hitman Bret Hart. So if anybody was going to do it and still keep on doing it today and stay true to wrestling, it'd be him. That's why I say that.
It's a good argument.
Honestly, if I was in that situation, one thing I would have done was to say, okay, well, what if you didn't face... I looked at it as a situation like Vince was glued, because even if you would have had Austin, even if it would have been The Undertaker, I don't think Bret would have wanted to lose anyway in that situation. And, when you saw Medusa, Alundra Blaze come and drop that title into the trash can on Nitro, yeah, Eric Bischoff was that kind of guy to be like, hey, Bret, bring the WWE Championship over. He was that kind of guy. So I knew Vince had to do exactly what he had to do, but I always thought there was more to that story than meets the eye. Like I wouldn't say that Bret knew everything, but that camera, like you said, the Wrestling Shadows, the camera guy is right there.
He knew it was coming.
Well, if it was a work or not, that instance gave WWE the best character to win the Monday Night War, and that was Mr. McMahon. If Mr. McMahon wasn't born, WCW would have won.
So Joshua asked Matt, do you feel the wrestling show more reflects the golden era, the new generation, or the attitude era?
Ooh, that's a good question. I mean, I would like to say that it reflects the attitude era just because we're trying to break as many rules as possible. I mean, I know we've talked about the things I've done to get in trouble doing the wrestling show, but we're also being very innovative and having matches in places where somebody could end up in a body of water, which is reminiscent of something that Al Snow would have done during the Attitude Era, which I think has really influenced me and the other guys that help with the wrestling show a lot growing up as wrestling fans. So to answer your question, Josh, thank you, by the way, great question. I think the wrestling show reflects most the Attitude Era.
Now, when you guys saw the WCW was bringing Nitro on to TNT and they were going to compete against WWF, when you guys watched that episode and Lex Luger shows up, do you think that's what started the momentum for WCW, or do you think it's when in 96 Scott Hall shows up on Nitro? And none of us knew that back then, you didn't know the dirt sheets. You didn't know that Scott Hall left WWE for a contract. We all thought, wow, that's Razor Ramon here. So, Xavier, what do you think? Like, what do you think jump started it?
I was not watching wrestling when Luger did that. I had gotten out because WrestleMania 8 kind of sucked, besides the Macho Man Flair match. So I didn't see that live. I saw that in hindsight, but it blurred the lines in one respect. So they called him Scott Hall, but he was still in gimmick of Razor Ramon. So that's how it blurred the lines. Like, is he still under contract for WWF? Because you knew at that point as like a teenager kind of, smartened up fan that when they went to a different company, they competed under a totally different gimmick. But he was Razor Ramon. He had the toothpick and everything. So, yeah, I think that's what really jump-started stuff for WCW. Because everybody was switching the channel then. Because you never in wrestling have seen something like that before. A guy coming through the crowd and beating up announcers. You know what I mean? Until there's an old adage in old wrestling, like Kev, from the Golden Age, and Matt, this. The interviewer is protected. He needs authority, so you don't touch those guys. And Scott Hall is coming down and kicking the shit out of him.
Yeah, and
so about you, Matt, like what?
Well, I'm just going to add to what Xavier is saying. I hate to have to agree with the son of a bitch, but he does make a good point here. And that you had the fans kind of wondering, who was going to come out next, because Scott Hall was the big holy shit, but he's like, I ain't coming alone. So that really got the buzz going of how many guys from WWE are going to come. We already seen Luger, we've seen Hogan, we've seen Macho Man, and now they're taking Razor. And who's he going to bring with them? And then when it was Diesel, it was just like, okay, they got all the main players from one show to the next. So we're sitting there waiting to see who the next guy is, because guess what? They're teasing a third member, and they're teasing a fourth member. They keep on bringing more guys in. So it really got a lot of eyes on the product. The NWO specifically, which was supposed to be the faction coming from WWE to invade WCW and destroy the product from within.
Yeah, and with that third member, the craziest thing about that. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Xavier. I actually want to hear this part.
So with the third member, we all know who the third member was, but while they were teasing it, when that happened, because Josh and I were in high school, that was national media coverage news with that switch.
Good point. Yeah.
That was the craziest thing. Like, that goes to show you how much ingrained in pop culture yellow and red Hulk Hogan is.
Mm-hmm.
That when he turned heel, it was on CNN. It was on the ticker tape. Hulk Hogan's a bad guy.
Fans turn on Hogan. Throw all riot in WCW.
I remember watching it, and I was like, because I read the rumors that eventually they were talking about putting Sting as the member of NWO, which wouldn't have worked, obviously. But when I saw Hogan come down there, Bobby Heenan ruined it, going, "Which side is he on? Which side is he on?" They're like, "What? Are you ridiculous?"
Yeah.
And then Bobby Heenan went for himself. And then when Hogan dropped the leg, I was like, did he just drop the leg on Macho Man? But then my family was pro Hogan. So everybody in my house was basically like, why is he doing this? I'm like, this is cool. I'm following what Hollywood's doing. I'm sticking with the thing. And I kept telling him, like, look, Hogan kept getting jumped by people years and years and years. This is payback. But, I think at first when Hogan first joined, he was still doing the Hogan promo, like the Hulk program. I think later on is when he finally got comfortable as Hollywood.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I liked how you wondered if Hogan was going to stay bad, or was he going to turn on Hall and Nash? Like, was he going to be able to make this transition? Because I know the first night when I seen it, I thought he was going to drop a leg on everybody. And then when he started teaming up with those guys, I'm like, holy shit, he is going to be a bad guy. But still, a part of me didn't believe it. I was like, no, he's not going to stay bad. But then when he did, like you were about to say, get into the groove of the Hollywood gimmick, he really solidified himself as probably the top heel the WCW had ever.
So Josh asks, which promotion in 2022 still carries the Attitude Era style of a product?
Definitely not WWE currently.
Correct.
No.
I would say the closest thing in my feeling, just experiencing it like as a young adult, would be Impact Wrestling. Would have the best feel of the Attitude Era. Because the Attitude Era feel was being rebel and being rogue. Not knowing what the hell's going on next, not knowing what somebody's going to say. I can't say that for AEW, because in AEW, when the Young Bucks come to the ring, you're going to get this glossy, neon, flippy-floppy nonsense.
Yeah, the only thing reminiscent of the Attitude Era in my mind is Jon Moxley. I think he just tries to embody the Attitude Era, but I can't say a promotion is doing it the way they did.
I would say Moxley, but then anytime Edge comes out and he has that brood music, it kind of brings me back a little bit to the Attitude Era. But
yeah,
I don't think there's any promotion except for maybe Impact, like Jay was talking about, that I would say has that embodied. But I do agree with Matt that Jon Moxley, the character, embodies an Attitude Era ECW version. So
could you imagine if Moxley would have been around back then? He would have been huge.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Moxley versus Foley.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Someone called the Young Bucks the Young Cucks. So Michael Carr asks, hey guys, what is your favorite Attitude Era moment? So I'm gonna start with you, Matt. What's your favorite Attitude Era moment?
It's gonna have to be. I mean, this is like Attitude Era Monday Night Wars, I guess. So I'm gonna have to go with WCW since I'm a bigger WCW market. It's gonna be the day when Goldberg jackhammered Hogan live on Nitro, and the whole fucking crowd jumped out of their seats, and Goldberg won the belt on his winning streak. That still to this day, that gives me chills. I make the kids watch that match. You forgot about that when we're watching it again. It's the best moment. So that's what I would say.
For me, I'd have to say the end of the Attitude Era in when Austin turned on everybody and aligned with Vince. That you never saw that coming at WrestleMania 17. You never saw that coming by a long shot. That was the one time, like, because I was not really an Austin fan during the Attitude Era, but that was a legitimate pop because I had already been trained as a wrestler by this point. So I knew like what to look for with storyline wise, but that actually took me by surprise. And it's one of my favorite memories because it was like, what the and then we got all the gold with Stone Cold and Kurt Angle wearing the little cowboy hats.
Yeah. Jimmy crack corn and I don't care. Jimmy crack corn and I don't care. Now, but my favorite one is when you didn't see it coming, Nash beats Goldberg for the belt. Then they arrest Goldberg, saying that he was doing stuff to Miss Elizabeth. And we have Hogan do the finger poke of doom. But at the same time, before that, Tony Schiavone says, hey, if you're going to look at their next channel, Mick Foley is going to win their championship. And the switch over to that. And seeing Stone Cold come out there with a big old pop, knock the Rock in the head with the chair, put Mick Foley on top of him. Damn. That's one of my fond memories. I love that, actually.
Great.
I still have animosity for Tony Schiavone over
that. Hey.
I mean, Tony Schiavone pretty much screwed their momentum that day by saying, hey, Mick Foley's going to win their championship. A lot of us like Mick Foley.
Hell yeah.
So for you to say that, we're like, really? Let's go over here on Raw. Boom.
Yeah, they're finally going to take the belt off Rock. All right. I was ready for that.
Let's see. I'm reading what. So Josh asks, his in-ring performances, chemistry kind of took back a seat during the Attitude Era. Who you consider your top 3 talented in-ring workers during the Attitude Era? You want to go with that, Xavier?
Well, during the Attitude Era, I'd have to say like the undercard WCW guys probably were the best workers. Absolutely. Like the guys who became the Radicals in WWF, I would have to say were the best actual workers of the Attitude Era, like Rey Mysterio, Eddie Guerrero, Chris Benoit. That whole cruiserweight division, it was a perfect storm for WCW at that point because, you had, if you tuned in for the first hour, which we did because Nitro was on for 3 hours. So for the first hour, Josh and I would watch WCW and we got to see all that awesome work. And then it was like all character work, for the last 2 hours in WCW and WWF.
What you, Matt?
That's great. Those guys did a lot of in-ring work. That's definitely what I was going to say. And I know that Owen Hart over on WWE during the Attitude Era was probably the one putting in the best matches. I want to say like D'Lo Brown, guys like that. They still had some of those guys over there too that were putting on the same type of cruiserweight matches, just not at the caliber that it was over on the other side. And even guys like Ken Shamrock, he was putting on matches like nothing we'd ever seen before too. I believe they fought in a parking lot. When it wasn't so much in-ring chemistry, but when him and Steve Blackman got together anywhere, it was like, holy shit, we're going to get a good fight. And The Rock, I don't know if we give him enough credit for in-ring talent, but, The Rock can do some stuff but nobody else can do in wrestling. So I got to give him credit. And, yeah.
I have to give props to Jericho. I love the Chris Jericho Ralphus thing.
Oh,
and, the Ralph.
We love that idea.
He comes in there basically saying, I beat Goldberg, and just trying to like Jericho was like one of the very first ones to kind of try to branch out of that cruiserweight. So I felt when Jericho debuted on WWE and he interrupted The Rock, I thought that was perfect. That was easily the perfect thing for Jericho. But one of my favorite parts of WCW, a lot of people don't give this guy credit. I thought one of the best workers on there was Diamond Dallas Page.
Oh yeah.
And that's one of the things, him and Macho Man's feud in 97.
Mm-hmm. Oh, man.
Page talked about it a lot. Yeah, it's great. Yeah. So Josh asks us, do we consider ECW a part of the Attitude Era at all?
If you let me field this real quick, Kev, I don't think there could have been as much of an Attitude Era without that underlying presence of ECW. I mean, in the mainstream course of things, it was WCW versus WWF, but you were always aware of guys like Rob Van Dam and Sandman. But you were kind of afraid, at least, you know, in my household, I was kind of afraid to watch it because if my mom came in and saw people stapling each other's butt cheeks shut and then hitting them with a car bomb, you know what I mean? She'd freak out. But it was like that guilty pleasure. And then, dude, a lot of those guys became like some of their top talent at the end of the Attitude Era. So I would agree with Josh. They were kind of like the rudder.
Yeah, I definitely agree. You know, it's funny you said that about your parents because I had the ECW video game for one day before my mom made us take it back to Toys R Us. So I wouldn't have been allowed to watch even more than a second of that anyway. So we knew what it was and we knew it was a possibility. And we kind of knew that all those guys had been there, you know, Cactus Jack. We knew that Eddie Guerrero had been in other organizations. I feel like they had mentioned it before too, and like the magazines were talking about ECW. So like we all knew the presence of it. Yeah, I agree with you on that.
Well, you know, and that the whole ECW mindset gave them more credibility, I think, in the Attitude Era. So when they jumped ship, you knew these were tough mamma jammas that were coming to fight. You didn't think they were going to wrestle you. You know what I mean? Fight you.
Mm-hmm.
My ECW moment is when they came here to the Municipal Auditorium for 1 year, one date, 97. I went to it. That was the year I think Sabu and Taz were fighting, and Taz almost looked like he broke Sabu's neck with that. And I knew it was bad when people started leaving the arena, like kids started leaving the arena, like their parents took them to the show. I'm like, you guys don't understand. This ain't WCW or WWE here. That I saw like parents bit complaining, and then Nashville decided we're not having ECW here ever again.
Damn.
Because it was
like, you know, that fed into what Heyman wanted. You know, Heyman wanted that attitude like that because it sold more tickets.
Well, Michael says, I can't believe I have to agree with Superstar. And Josh says, since Matt and Xavier agreed on almost every perspective of wrestling, does this mean you guys are best friends now? Will we see the body stars, Don't
even finish that sentence, Big Kev. Let me
just come on, stop.
Single chance in hell that me and this guy are ever going to get along, let alone be best friends. Get the fuck out of here. I don't get along.
Josh must be dropping acid too earlier in the day. There's no way you can become best friends with a proctologist. I mean,
Jesus Christ. Yeah, I got too much work to do on my hands.
Do I need to come down there and be the referee for you guys?
Shit, we don't need no referee. Xavier can meet me at the dam anytime he wants to.
I know exactly where it is.
I know you do.
And in fact, there's graffiti of dicks all over there, and that's exactly where Matt would probably be standing.
Under the biggest one that you could find.
All right, guys, let's get back into it. Now, I don't know if you heard the story, but when AEW signed Punk, Bryan, and Adam Cole, CM Punk made a boo-boo by saying, hey, us signing is just as big as Nash and Hall coming to WCW with Hogan. How'd y'all feel about that?
What I felt about that is that CM Punk got into the fucking Drano under the sink and was on some kind of high that nobody's ever experienced before. Because as cool as that was, that does not compare at all to those other signings. Like we just talked about, like Hogan turning made national fucking news. Everybody knew who the NWO was. So I do not agree with CM Punk. It was cool, it was a big moment for current wrestling, but unless you experienced the Attitude Era, you do not understand just how big the Hall, Nash, and Hogan thing was. It transcended the entire sport.
But I mean, wrestling has been so lame these last few years that it was the biggest pop we've seen since the exploding death match. So, I mean, I guess I was at least excited, and I definitely tuned in, you know, when I was standing waiting for CM Punk to come out and literally was glued to his entire speech. So I could see where people were going to come from with that comparison, because in the last 20 years, there ain't been nothing to get that excited about, you know, besides CM Punk coming back to professional wrestling. I don't even care to see him fight. I was just happy to see him come back and hear him talk, and we all got to witness that together, I feel like, as a wrestling community. So on that level, it's pretty cool.
You know, he is still over, because we went to the Fiserv to see an AEW show, and his reaction from the fans, the only thing I can compare it to is the reaction that Hogan and Rock had at WrestleMania 18. It was like one of the loudest reactions I've heard since then.
I believe
so Michael says, I guess McMichaels will have to destroy both factions on the wrestling show.
Good luck.
You know,
well,
what?
McMichael's got some attorneys coming after him, because like there's going to be a name change match coming up, because I don't know if you saw the wrestling show this last week, but my attorney, Delaney Quartermain, has issued him a challenge. It's just too similar. Michaels, McMichaels. So we'll see if Patrick McMichaels even survives the next match to give anybody else on the wrestling show any shit.
Yeah,
can I say something to this McMichaels dude?
Yeah.
If you show up and you mess with Matt and you mess with Xavier and you mess with my buddies at the wrestling show, I will rip your spleen out of your body and I will jump rope 20 times over your grave. You understand?
I like this guy. You hear that, McMichaels? Don't be coming with
I will bring you to Suplex City, baby. You don't want any of that.
Sounds like a challenge.
Now, we go into the NWO. Do you think the NWO went too bigger than what they were doing, or do you think they should have just stayed with Hogan, Hall, and Nash?
Ooh.
What do you guys think?
You guys start, because I was a WWF guy, so I want to hear your opinions first.
All right, I'll give you my opinion on the split, as I guess what we would call it. Because when the NWO split from being black and white to black and red, which was the Wolfpack, and black and white, which was Hollywood, it almost got to where WCW was lost in this split. It was like a tidal wave almost. And if they would have done it for like, you know, a season or an event leading up to a culmination of storylines, or they would have written a fucking ending to the storyline, you know, 6 months before they finished it, it would have been able to make sense and culminate. But the fact that they just kept on trying to add more to this fire that was already burnt out, you know, and then you had the LWO, which was funny, but didn't make a whole lot of sense. It was just them trying to follow along, and all of a sudden everybody in WCW was part of an NWO type faction, to where it basically killed the brand, because I feel like even towards the end of WCW, there was still reminiscence of the red and black are coming back. You know, they never just let it die. So if they would have let it die or take over, one or the other, it needed to take over or die. And they never allowed that storyline to be ended properly.
The one NWO faction I loved, and they don't get a lot of credit, is the NWO Elite with Big Papa Pump, Buff Bagwell, Lex Luger, Scott Hall, Hogan, and Nash. I think if they just would have kept the NWO like that with the black and red and just kept it as NWO Elite,
man,
I actually would have been okay with that. But to be honest with you, they were it seemed like everybody on WCW was joining the NWO. Now we all know that Eric Bischoff got that idea from New Japan Wrestling. That's where the NWO originated, was with the New Japan.
Okay.
But Xavier, now you were a big WWF fan at the time. When DX took that truck, when they took that tank, to Nitro, what would you think would have happened if Eric Bischoff would have let them in?
everybody. I don't think there would have been any shoot fights, but there definitely would have been some matches going on because everybody knew each other. They were still friends. They were at the time. Cell phones looked like a freaking Ghostbusters proton pack, but they were still texting each other, back and forth. Eric Bischoff even said he wanted that to happen. He didn't know who issued the order to shut the gate. Bischoff said he wanted Vince to show up on his program because it would make for good television for everybody involved. So whoever shut the gate probably got fired because, Billy Gunn, I think, even said he had that's one of the only times in his career he had butterflies in his stomach because he didn't know if he was going to have to actually beat up security guards. Because once they were going to clear that gate, it was on like Chinatown. But see, that's the thing that, like what Matt was talking about with the NWO, there was no prestige anymore being in a faction. The whole thing that sells a faction is the prestige of being in it. Like with DX having only a select few members, like people wanted to be part of that group. And the fact that they didn't let just anybody be part of it added to the sellability of it. Just like the Four Horsemen, the Radicals, a lot of other factions. When all of a sudden people are starting to take off their shirt and everybody has an NWO shirt on, you start kind of like cheering for just the regular WCW guys. You know what I mean? Like, hey, Scott Norton before he turned, like, hey, I like you. Oh, wait, now you're NWO, so I have to choose another WCW guy.
You know what's interesting about that too is Scott Hall and Nash said that they were behind the door when that
Really?
Dang.
Scott Hall was standing there. He was about to welcome them with open arms.
Yeah, dude, it would have just like when Bischoff called out Vince. Like it would have made for great TV if that stuff would have happened.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I remember that at that pay-per-view event. Like I was thinking he was going to show up. I'm like, hell, Nash and Hogan, all the other guys have already jumped ship. When's Vince coming?
If you listen to Bruce Pritchard's podcast, McMahon knew nothing about it because at the time during the Attitude Era, Howard Finkel had this thing called the Finkel Report, where he would feed Vince all the info of what's going on, but he purposely left out that of him getting called out by Bischoff because he knew McMahon would act on it. When McMahon found out that he got called out and he didn't know about it, he was legit pissed because he would have gone to that pay-per-view.
Damn, man. Yeah, he should have.
I legitimately think that he would have whooped Bischoff's ass.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Bischoff does know karate, but yeah, Vince held off Bret Hart because there was an instance where Bret Hart and him fought before that Montreal screw job.
Oh, okay.
There's footage of it. It was a Shawn Mykeals match, and Bret was pissed about something. That's when you can tell Vince is a fighter because the first thing he did is he took Bret's T-shirt and pulled it over his face.
I remember that,
and held his face down on the table.
Jeez.
And totally buried his own talent. He made his talent look like he couldn't fight.
Wow. Not against the boss. All right.
Vince McMahon pulled a good little hockey move. Put the thing over there and just.
I've not seen that video.
Yeah, I can't remember what they were arguing about, but that was at the very beginning of the Attitude Era.
Okay.
Bret Hart was being a whiny butt about something. I think he got mad about. He got mad about something, and he said he was tired of it. I remember he pushed Vince once in the ring. And then he got mad at Vince again, and then Vince basically grabbed that white shirt and had a hold of Bret like that. I was like, I'm telling you.
Interesting that Vince and Bret had the feud with the boss and the employee before the Austin and Bret feud came out, So that might have been what really started the Mr. McMahon character was screwing Bret.
Oh, without Bret, there would be no Mr. McMahon. I mean,
yeah.
Well, let me ask you guys this. Now, I don't really talk much about conspiracy theories, but one in the wrestling conspiracies is people think that Hogan, Hall, and Nash were planted by Vince to take WCW down. What do you guys think of that little rumor?
Hogan, I would believe. Not the other two. The other two have they're too honest about it, and they all tell you they went over there strictly for money. But I mean, if Hogan went over there with marching orders from Vince to do a certain type of thing, and then I'm gonna let these other two guys go, we can start a feud together. I would be inclined to believe that Hogan and Vince stayed up all night one night in a hotel room coming up with a crazy harebrained idea to take out WCW and then try to do it.
I think if that conspiracy theory was true, they would have done some kind of unveil of it together well before Vince bought the WCW in 2001. You know what I mean? Because when during the Russo era of the Attitude Era, there was just too much bullshit going on that I think Vince would have allowed, like Viagra on a pole match, a Judy Bagwell on a forklift match.
Yeah, I mean, he might not have been overseeing operations, but I mean, he could have planted Hogan, I guess. And Hogan,
but I mean, Vince did have great ideas, like putting one of his fattest guys into this company in the smallest outfit possible and having him come down to fart noises. So I guess he's used to humiliating people. But
yeah, that's Vince's favorite thing to do.
A lot of people don't know this, but it's in Hogan's book, and it's on Bruce Pritchard's podcast. Something to Wrestle, if you guys haven't seen it, but he pretty much says that Hogan almost jumped ship during the Attitude Era, and him and Vince did meet up one night after a Nitro.
Yeah,
and Hogan met him at the hotel, and they were talking, and obviously Hogan re-signed with WCW. But when I heard about Hogan's contract in WCW, like how much money he made just from an appearance. The way the wrestlers get their contracts now, you could thank Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, and Hulk Hogan for that. These guaranteed contracts, you can thank them for having.
I don't know if anything's guaranteed in this world, Big Kevin, especially not a wrestling contract.
Well, I got a story to tell you guys. I was going to tell them about. I met Jim Cornette at a convention about a couple of years ago. Jim Cornette tells me two stories in the Attitude Era. One, he says that Jerry Lawler was wearing white pants one day and was going to take a shit in the bathroom. And then he hears a commotion. Shawn Michaels comes in, pushes Bret. Bret and them are tackling each other. So Jerry Lawler comes out of the bathroom, doesn't know if he wiped his ass or not, splits them up. Bret has a hold of Shawn's hair, and somewhere in Jerry Lawler's house, he has a Ziploc bag with Shawn Michaels' hair.
Wow.
Yeah, you can almost tell around the exact time that happened too on TV, because he goes from being able to pull his hair back into a full ponytail.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? To being like almost bald on top.
Yeah, shit.
But then again, though, I'm sitting there thinking, wow, Bret pulled a girl move pulling hair. I mean,
he wanted to hit Shawn where it hurt, and I feel like Shawn was always flaunting that hair around. You don't fuck with people in real life. That's why you have scripted finishes, because people are fucking ruthless. I mean, I would never choose to fight anybody in real life, because if it's gonna happen, they're gonna go for their weakest spot on you. That's how you fight.
Well, yeah, and Bret's a product of a different generation too. He was trained by Stu, so he was trained. If anybody goes into business for themselves, you just fuck them up as best as possible.
Fuck.
Now the other story he told me was at WrestleMania 14. Shawn Michaels was going around earlier that day telling Vince that he does not want to drop the belt to Austin. So Undertaker saw what happened in Survivor Series. He tapes his fist at the gorilla position, and he pretty much tells Shawn, if you don't drop that belt, I'm going to beat your ass. I guess that superstar's lawyer calling Matt.
Right. No, I can see Taker doing that, because at that point in the company, Taker was like the conscience, so to speak, of the WWF.
Yeah.
And like the locker room leader. In fact, there's stories that if somebody would fuck up, he would be the judge for Wrestler Court. I don't know if do you think a lot of your viewers know what Wrestling Court is?
Yes, some of them do. Yeah.
Okay. So to people who don't know what Wrestling Court is if you do something bad behind the scenes, then normally the locker room leader is the judge, and there's two sides presenting a case of what you did right or, to defend yourself. Normally the outcome is you have to buy like beer for the entire locker room for like a month, But I'm sure Taker was there representing the locker room because what was best for business at that time was Steve Austin. Because if they wouldn't have pulled the trigger that night, he would have suffered the same fate as Braun Strowman's. And I know Matt hates Braun, but when Braun was riding that cusp of popularity in, 2016, 17, and they didn't pull the trigger on him, that he lost all the momentum. Then all of a sudden he's running around the fucking ring making choo-choo noises.
Oh, man. How embarrassing. And telling people that he's standing up for everyone that's ever been called stupid.
So McMichael says even the Irishman has more professionalism than leaving the phone on loud.
Well, the Irishman don't have any kids at school, apparently, and he shut his fucking mouth because my son's got a basketball game tonight, and I got to go figure out what time I got to be there. Next question.
Now, Superstar, when you took me and Mel out in Hollywood, did you tell Matt that you met up with Braun Strowman and asked him to be a part of the Body Stars?
Adam Scher? The funny thing is Adam Scher, the only reason I did that is Adam Scher, that's Braun Strowman's real name. He lives in Neosho, Wisconsin, which is only about 40 minutes from Rockford. So,
what?
Depending,
you telling me this guy lives close to me?
that's actually kayfabe real life, Matt. Yeah, he lives. He bought when he got fired from WWE. He bought like 80 acres because he likes to hunt.
Okay.
So he is legit 40 minutes north of Rockford.
Wow. So, yeah, we could definitely work out some type of feud with that bastard. I'm going to go hunting for him. I like to hunt myself some big old bastard train riding run around the ring, motherfuckers.
Well,
I'm coming.
The only way that would work with Braun Strowman is if you get me to join the Outliers.
I could recruit a whole group of Outliers, and we could all go train hunting.
We'll see which side I will be on because me and Mel are usually lone wolves. We do our own thing, but I mean, both of y'all's offers are really intriguing. I gotta admit that. Really,
we have a common bond through Hollywood Hogan and wrestling fandom, so you're more than welcome to come hang out with us, and we'll bump in the ring. If you want to be part of the Outliers, bro, the offer's on the table. I have a lot of fun hanging out with you in these StreamYard podcasts. So, you're definitely available to be on our group if you would like to.
I can see Superstar is up to something over here.
Hey, you've already heard the offers. I mean, you get to hang out with me, Courtney, and JB at the Southern Cross Ranch, which the reason my finishing move is called the Southern Cross is that is one of the most popular strip clubs in Pasadena, California that we have stake in. So being a VIP there, Big Kev, you and Mel can do absolutely whatever you want. Being in the Body Stars is all about having a platform, having fun. It's not about yelling at people or putting numbers at the end of your name.
How are you going to distinguish yourself from other people that have the same exact name as you without the numbers? Come on.
Well, I
guess if your name's Xavier Mykeals, you got to have your lawyer do it.
Well, I will say this, though, guys. The offers are great, especially when you want to send that stuff for my birthday, Xavier. That was coming up, my 40th, so that's...
See, you're sending in birthday gifts, too? God damn. All right, I got to step up my gift giving.
That was funny with the shirt. I think that. Oh man, what did Josh say? He says, "If I were Big Kev, I would have my own road of glory, other than hang out with factions." Hey,
I just got to interrupt there. That's because he decided to he pulled an NWO on me. He was Chaos. Josh Yeager was an original member of the Body Stars, and then he formed his own faction. So don't listen to that.
Whoa.
So wrestling fans, when you see Chaos, just know him and I formed the Body Stars, and then he Benedict Arnold me. He turned his back.
And joined the Ministry of Greatness instead, huh?
He also says, do I want to be a star or be a supporting cast?
Dang. Well, I'm really curious to see what Chaos is going to do moving forward here with the wrestling show. And now I didn't even know that you guys used to be former partners in the Body Stars. So, I mean, this.
Yeah, 96 when we were doing. So we transitioned from backyard to indie because we both got trained. And when we both got trained is when we formed the Body Stars. And then while we're out on the indies, he decided to form this faction called the Country of Control, COC. No lie.
Damn. So just out of the blue, while you and this guy are having a great time making a wrestling faction together, he goes behind your back and tries to make his own wrestling faction with other people?
Yeah, that's Chaos. That's the guy that has been missing from the wrestling show. He's probably somewhere like doing blow off of strippers' asses, living the high life, because that is what Al Chaos King does. He lives life. He climbs mountains, sits in hot tubs with naked men. Who knows what he's doing? You can't trust Chaos.
Let me tell you. Let me tell you something. Chaos. Big Kev, Kevin Mania. I don't follow anybody. I follow my own thing. I'm a 200-something pound silverback gorilla. Do I need to follow people? No, I don't. When you got arms like this, man, you don't follow anybody else. You understand? I don't fall behind. I lead. That's me.
Well, I'm sure you're going to have a path of your own on the show, bro. But, every path goes multiple different ways. So if you want to start it with us and then go off on your own, that option is there too. Don't feel like you're alone.
But I have to tell him something too. But then again, though, it's 2022 there, Mr. Chaos. So sometimes being by yourself isn't always what it's cracked up to be.
Especially on the wrestling show, bro, because it seems like everybody's out to get everybody else. You're not really
That's
sure.
why I had to form the
Yeah.
I'll say that, Matt. That's why I had to form the Body Stars. Besides you and Kate with the Outliers, everybody in that locker room it's like looking around the corner.
Yeah. Yeah, you never know which one's going to try to find a good place to stick a knife.
So Chaos has told me it takes more than big arms and a big mouth to work in a wrestling ring, Kev.
Ooh.
Well, I do have past experience in it, Mr. Chaos. It's been a while.
Well, you know what? You know why he says that? He did one intergender match, and the girl he was wrestling him started calling him the Anaconda, if you know what I mean. So maybe that's what he's referring to besides big mouth and big arms.
Yeah. Well, we'll get back into it, guys. So, one thing with the Attitude Era was one guy that evolved a lot during the Attitude Era was the Undertaker. What are you guys' thoughts and memories of the Ministry Undertaker?
So Taker survived that whole thing. I'll just say this. Taker survived the Attitude Era because he did what a lot of wrestlers are afraid to and adapt his gimmick.
Yeah.
If he would have stayed as that more Wild West mortician Undertaker, he would have got, you know what I mean? He would have gone the way of Duke the Dumpster Droese. But when he started, because I think he pitched the idea of Satanism to Vince. When he did the Satanism gimmick, I mean, that was a whole different thing than the whole badassery of what was going on with the rest of WWF. But you want to know, honestly, I'll throw this at you guys. Honestly, I think the idea that was 20 years ahead of its time during the Attitude Era was the Nation of Domination.
Yeah. Great point.
But no, that the Ministry,
Yeah.
I didn't like where they went with the higher power, though. That was one of the stupidest things that WWF did during the Attitude Era. It should have been like an actual wrestler, somebody from a different federation or a new kid. But when it was Vince McMahon, it was kind of like, oh, Jesus.
It's me, Austin.
I don't even remember that.
So they did this big storyline where Undertaker kidnapped,
Stephanie.
like, you know,
Stephanie, right? Crucified her.
Right.
Yeah.
And then he started saying that the reason he did that is he was trying to bring about the higher power. You know, like somebody more powerful than him in regards to Satanism and darkness. So you're thinking, you're like, holy fuck, this is a guy the Undertaker looks up to and is afraid of. What wrestler could this possibly be?
Okay. And then
one Raw, he comes down in like a the hooded Scream outfit.
Yeah.
And when he flips the hood back, it's Vince. It was pretty lame. I'll have to admit that was pretty lame.
Wow.
You know what would have been a really cool twist to that if it would have been Stone Cold.
Yeah.
That whole thing. That would have been a really good one.
Yeah, because then what do they do with the storyline after that? It's just dead, right? Because Vince.
That's when they did the corporate ministry. Like as soon as they did that, that's when it became the corporate ministry.
Okay, and the big boss man's Hell in a Cell match with the Undertaker.
But the interesting part about that is, do you guys know who they actually had somebody lined up to be the higher power, but Vince hated his look because he wasn't a big guy. You know, it was Christopher Daniels, the fallen angel.
Whoa!
I heard that rumor. Yeah.
Never heard that before. That would have been good.
It would have been cool because Christopher Daniels, he was green. You know what I mean? He was in his early 20s at that point.
Damn. They dropped the ball on him for sure.
I mean, the higher power now. Another person that I heard that they thought about having a higher power when they were trying to sign Hogan away from Nitro, they were almost thinking about having Hogan be the higher power.
That would have been amazing. That would have been amazing if they would have had Hollywood Hogan.
Oh, yeah, Hollywood Hogan for sure. Come back, and then you see TNT suing WWE over copyright infringement, character impersonation.
Well, I mean, one of the coolest things I like that the Ministry Undertaker did, besides the big boss man being hung by his neck.
Oh yeah, in that cage, yeah.
Is when he kidnapped Austin from the hospital and tried to embalm him alive. I thought that was like, and he was over doing the whole Natra None.
Oh yeah, speaking in Latin, they got so much hate mail. USA Network got so much hate mail that that was actually when that segment, they told Vince that they'd cut broadcast if Undertaker ever spoke in Latin again.
And what did they do? And what did they do? In payback, they put the Latin stuff in Undertaker's feed.
Yeah.
Found the way around it.
Now, but see, I think that era is when the promoters around the world realized that fans don't have to love your champion; they can hate you as long as they're reacting in some capacity.
Right.
Oh,
because you know what happened when I heard on the internet that there was hate mail because of Satanism? I'm like, well, if it's pissing off old people, I want to watch.
Yeah, it's going to get a reaction out of it. You want to figure out what it is and see how much they're going to push the envelope.
I think what killed the Attitude Era, in my opinion, is when Vince took the company public and started having stockholders and people that he had to answer to. Because back then, Vince didn't answer to anybody.
Yeah, and then he had to meet quotas every month and sell a certain amount of merchandise, and now it just becomes like printing off cash every pay-per-view or event that comes out. They know how much money they're about going to make for it.
See, Josh and I had a conversation about that recently, and I can tell where WWF started going downhill is when they fired Jim Cornette. And the reason I say that is because Vince had a perfect storm. When one person thinks of an idea, you better hope that sure as shit that's a great idea. But when you have several minds together, they can refine it. So Vince would come up with an idea, and he had Vince Russo and Jim Cornette. He had the new school, and he had the old school. So if Russo would pitch an idea that was totally like batshit crazy, Vince also had in his ear why it couldn't possibly work from Cornette. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So he had this booking committee where they could refine an idea so that they were like, okay, this will work. because we know the pros and cons of all sides of it. Whereas when it was just Vince individually, I mean, my God, that the whole WCW invasion angle was a clusterfuck when it could have been awesome.
Yeah, you're so right about that. They could have made that so much better and had a payoff. But instead, it just seemed like another WWE angle.
Well, there is a on YouTube. I don't know the name of it. The fans can Google it, but it's Jim Cornette WCW WrestleMania booking. And what that is Cornette, right before he got fired, they had the idea for the end of the invasion angle to culminate at WrestleMania 18. And it was going to be WCW guys versus WWF guys. And whoever won the most matches, that's what the company logo would have became.
Bro, that
And it
sounds
would
like
have been-
something to do right now with Raw and SmackDown. You know, to get those two titles unified or the two shows to making sense. Let them fight over that. You know, whoever wins the most, that side gets to keep their belts and the other side loses theirs.
Right.
Seems like the perfect storm could happen. Me and Big Kev were talking about this before we went live on the air about those title belts they got on WWE right now. There's so many of them. And why not unify with Brock and Roman? It's like the same moment.
When I think about that too, and I also heard some stuff too, Xavier, about the fact of at WrestleMania 18, they were talking about Sting and Undertaker, and they were talking about they were going to do the Hogan and Rock thing like they did. Well, to be honest with you, I love that Hogan Rock match at WrestleMania 18, but I still think Stone Cold dropped the ball when he could have gotten a chance to wrestle Hogan at Mania. He dropped that ball.
They couldn't come to a solid agreement of who would go over, how they'd go over, how the match line would go. Because, Austin was at the end because 19 was his last WrestleMania.
Yeah.
But Hogan, from what I gather, was at that point in his career was incredibly difficult to do business with. And that's why we got the match at SummerSlam 2006, where Shawn acted like a total idiot in the match against him. Because if a guy doesn't do business, what do? If you know he's going over, you sell his moves to the point where everybody can tell everything's fake and it makes the other guy look like an idiot. It's exactly what Shawn did.
And he did it to the T. Because, Shawn wanted to have like 3 matches with him, and Hogan was like, nope, we're only having 1, and I'm beating you.
Yep.
Like, all right.
And then he came back the next.
But no, it's a shame. That's one match. What's that?
I said then he came back the next SummerSlam, faces the legend killer Randy Orton. And when Randy Orton's at that peak of killing legends and punting them, Hogan should have let Randy Orton beat him at that point.
Yeah, not Hogan.
See, I think when Shawn came back at the very, very, very end of the Attitude Era, kind of proved to everybody that it's not if you win or lose, really, if you're a smart wrestling fan, but it's the quality of your match.
Oh, yeah.
Because Shawn, if you look at it, from the time he came back in 2001, 2002 till he retired, I think you can count on your hands and toes how many times he actually won.
Yep. So true. He won like one night after WrestleMania against John Cena.
Yeah.
Like a rematch. I can remember that one victory, and I think he might have beat Kurt Angle 1 out of the 4 times they fought too. But yeah, he lost to Undertaker multiple times. He put everybody else over, but it didn't matter because everybody knew he was still the best performer they had on the show.
Yeah.
He didn't win.
Did you guys, as WCW fans, ever switch back and forth?
Yep.
Because that was a big thing growing up. Because there wasn't you couldn't have your cell phone in your hand and your TV going to watch both shows at the exact same time, And only really rich families had the picture-in-picture, which we were really jealous over on TVs. So you could watch one station on the big, and then in the little picture, the other station. But because that was a big thing, switching back and forth to see what's going on each broadcast.
We had multiple TVs going on in the house. My grandma was a huge wrestling fan, so she'd have Raw upstairs and then Nitro on in the basement.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's
nice
cool.
Over there. Yeah.
That's pretty much what we did. We would have one TV in one room with Raw, the other TV would have Nitro, but I have a couple of VHSs where I flip back and forth. And so, like when you see it, it looks like, oh, there's Raw. And then nope, there's Nitro. There's Raw. Then nope, Nitro. So, yeah, I flipped over a lot because I mean, I've been to a couple of WCW events. I was there for the Hogan Piper Starrcade '96. Got to meet Nash and Hall at this little signing thing. Nash is one cool dude. Another event I got to go to a Nitro. There's still a clip of it where that old granny tries to slap at Hogan at ringside. that is still there, and I was cracking up on that because I'm like, wow, this is actually pretty cool. But speaking of which, on WCW, we saw the biggest feud ever between Sting and Hogan. How'd you guys feel about their Starrcade match? Was it hyped up too much, pretty much, and didn't deliver?
Does the Starrcade match have Bret Hart as the special guest referee, right? Are we thinking of the same thing? Yeah, that didn't need to happen for some reason. I feel like they should have waited to have Bret come out the next night on Nitro and challenge whoever won. I didn't understand why they needed to switch that at the last second. They built the match up for like 2 years, and it almost like blew its load before it even got started, is what it seemed like. The hype for it was so much better than the match. But, I mean, it is what it is. It was a Sting and Hogan match, and I think in that time in Sting's career, he wasn't really having knockout brawls. He was just having a good entrance.
And the sad thing is Hogan could barely work at that point because didn't he need a knee surgery?
Yes.
Yeah,
so, it didn't look good.
Yeah.
And plus, you had Sting not wrestling for almost 2 years.
Yeah, and then expecting him to come out and have any endurance. And I feel like he was just exhausted right out of the gate.
Now, Hogan did sabotage it. I agree with Mykeals there. Hogan did sabotage that. But Nick Patrick, though, was supposed to count, but he counted regularly. But he was supposed to count it fast. Instead, he counted it normal, which also kind of screwed up things. But when Bret Hart went to WCW, with all that momentum from the screw job, WCW did not know what to do with Bret Hart at all.
Clearly.
That night, I think, now looking back on it in hindsight, is the night WWF won the Monday Night War. Because that next night, they dropped the ball on doing anything with Bret Hart, riding off of this huge wave of controversy. Yeah. And also that night on WWF, Mr. McMahon was born.
Good point.
I still remember him going Bret, screw Bret. I have no sympathy for Bret Hart whatsoever. And that was perfect because there is Mr. McMahon now. And
they found a way to break the fourth wall perfectly. And the fans were let into a little bit of a secret as, oh my God, Vince McMahon really did let Bret Hart go to the other company.
Technically, if you think about it, Vince gave WCW a bone. Everybody's wanting to know what happened with Bret during that whole getting screwed and everything like that. Then what happens the next night? Nitro comes out, Hogan and the NWO comes out and starts singing Canadian stuff about Bret Hart. And I'm sitting there thinking, you could have easily put Bret Hart in a match with one of the NWO members. Yeah. Or you could have waited and had him. You could have waited to have him and Hogan that everybody wanted to see.
Yeah. Instead of bringing
if Bischoff was a smart promoter at that point, he would have at the next pay-per-view had Bret and Hogan wrestle for the title and pulled a second Montreal Screwjob in Bret's favor. That's what I would have done.
Yeah, that would have been perfect. The plan was already going on. They didn't touch on that storyline at all. It just came, here's a new wrestler, Bret Hart. And that was it.
Yeah. And then they had Bret Hart feud with Flair. And then all of a sudden, Bret Hart starts helping Hogan and joins the NWO, but not really join the NWO. It was it made no sense.
Yeah. Very bad. He won the United States Championship. I think they even did give him the world title.
They did.
But still horrifying what they did in that era. And then I think Goldberg was the one that supposedly ended his career.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
kick to the head. The kick to the head gave him that concussion and whiplash, and to where he couldn't wrestle anymore.
And then they didn't give him money they promised him.
Yeah, I think Matt's right. I think he's using that kick as an excuse with the money. Because if you keep watching that kick does not look as terrible as he's explaining.
No. Mm-hmm. Goldberg side kicks people all the time. That was something that he was doing. And he put his foot up, and Bret Hart ran into it. So,
if you watch the bump, he still tucks his chin. So he's not knocked silly where he hits his head on the canvas.
Yeah, no. He wasn't knocked down at impact either. So Bret might have just been having mini seizures leading up to that match, or something was going on with him mentally or physically already. And then when that kick happened, it might have just been like, okay, I'm not going to risk it no more. And then he blamed it on the kick. Is how I feel about it. But he kept that an ongoing kayfabe storyline where he's supposedly still mad at Goldberg for that.
Right.
I don't know.
What'd you guys think of Scott Steiner as a solo wrestler compared to being with Rick?
Oh, top 10 WCW talent. Anytime Scott Steiner's on camera, especially without Rick, I liked him so much better with anybody else, like Buff Bagwell, for example. You give Scott Steiner anybody, give him a girl, especially. He's gonna be the biggest star on screen. All he has to do is talk, and then you let him wrestle. He's the strongest guy they got. I don't know any other guy like that could do a Frankensteiner off the top ropes, then pick you up at the same time and press you right afterward, and then do 10 push-ups and go out and kiss a girl in the front row. I mean, Scott Steiner was literally the total package. I know they gave that to Luger as a moniker, but Scott Steiner, top 10 in my book, WCW talent of all time.
Yeah, and I think they could have done more with Rick. They just relegated him to the Marty Jannetty role at that point. He was the not as talented member of the tag team in the Booker's opinion. So they kind of just gave him shit gimmicks. Yeah.
The dog face gremlin, yeah.
And what's cool now is when you watch NXT 2.0 and you see Rick Steiner's son, it's like he's a mixture of both his dad and his uncle. When he gets on the mic, he talks just like Scott Steiner.
Good.
He does most of Steiner's moves too. I actually watch Braun Breaker. That's one of the only parts of WWE I'll watch.
I've not seen him yet, but I'm definitely gonna have to check him out.
He's fantastic. He's fantastic.
His finish is that awesome move where he'll do a press slam and then drop you into a.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
But he's also done the Steiner recliner as well,
okay.
which is really cool that he's brought that back and stuff. So
nice.
To me, Big Papa Pump, one thing I loved about him was his promos. He was the most loose cannon guy out there.
Yeah.
Dude, Steiner Math is still, in my opinion, one of the best promos ever aired on national television.
Easily.
I remember that one time he actually, I think him and Paige had that feud, and he was after Kimberly, and he said he was going to make her weak at the knees when she gets with the big bad booty daddy.
See, and they didn't capitalize on him. They had a great character in Scott Steiner, but for some reason, Bischoff just kept going with the same shtick, with Hollywood, and I don't get it.
By the time they got to Scott Steiner, it was like the train had already passed, and he was more frustrated. And I feel like they did give him the belt, but he was just all pissed off Scott Steiner. He wasn't the funny Scott Steiner that liked being a wrestler anymore. He was like, God damn it, it's finally my turn and the show sucks. Why'd you guys wait to give it to me now? I've been doing all my best work years ago, and now that it's too late, you're going to put the belt on me and expect me to create something out of this. I feel like they did the same thing with Booker T. It was almost just too late when they gave these guys the belts. WCW didn't have to lose. It's unfortunate that they did because they had so much steam, so much momentum. They had Mike Awesome for the longest time, and they did nothing with him also.
Mike Awesome was awesome. Then the thing that killed him, though, is when they started doing that thing with him wanting to bang fat chicks.
They made him that 70s guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, they ruined. It's like they deliberately ruined some of those characters on purpose. Like Glacier, they had him for the longest time. They built him up so well, and I don't know why they didn't do more storylines with him, but he just became a joke on the show.
Glacier would have been hot at that time because Mortal Kombat was hot at that time. And people were playing the Mortal Kombat game. The Mortal Kombat movie was out. He looks like a Mortal Kombat figure. So it could have worked with that. But I think what really pissed me off about the Scott Steiner thing was I loved his debut at the Madison Square Garden in Survivor Series. But they really, I believe him, WWE and Triple H really screwed Scott Steiner in those two matches.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Triple H, not a good worker, in my opinion. And that match he has with Scott Steiner is probably the worst match that Triple H has in my recent memory bank. And, in Scott Steiner, I can't say that it's either one of their faults. They both have no chemistry together. But I don't know if just Triple H was not trying, is kind of what I would say. And he just trying to expose Scott Steiner. So, and they, like you said, they just didn't give him fair justice in his matches and almost tried to make him look like he was bad, just so they wouldn't have to give him any credit for being as good as he was.
I would agree with that because I think Triple H was at that point in his career where he just wanted to make himself like the main event.
Yeah.
And just steamroll over people because he did that exact same thing to Booker T at WrestleMania.
Yeah.
Booker T should have won that Mania match.
Oh, God, with the Harlem Hangover.
Yeah.
He ain't done that move since or before that in a long time. He hits that flipping leg drop, and then Triple H gets out of it. Like, you bastard.
Well, at that time, Triple H was screwing RVD. He screwed Booker T. They killed Goldberg's momentum in that elimination chamber.
Yeah.
Triple H was the golden shovel guy. Everybody likes to think Hogan was the golden shovel. Triple H is probably like, hey, dude, look at my shovel.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
Well, yeah, you're banging the company owner's daughter, then you marry her. I mean, I guess you can do absolutely anything at that point.
Yeah, of course. They're going to use him to do all the dirty work, though, too. He's committed.
Someone said in the comments earlier, what we thought of Brian Pillman and Steve Austin, that whole gun segment.
So you know how in the beginning of books some books have like the prelude, the preface, you know what I mean? That kind of gets you into what's going to happen later in the book. I really think that the Pillman Austin thing was our prelude to everything with the Attitude Era. Because that little feud was them talking about screwing each other's wives and girlfriends. They're pulling guns on each other. They're breaking into each other's houses. They're blurring the lines of reality. Like, I mean, until that point, that you didn't film inside of somebody's house and see the camera crew and then see like somebody actually call the police because somebody's actually breaking a window to get in. You know what I mean? And then they went off at the perfect point because they went off for the week when Pillman shot the gun. So for a full week, you didn't know if somebody got killed.
Yeah, that's a good point, bro. And not to agree with your ass again, but I'm going to have to say that was the beginning of like cinematic wrestling and cinematic storytelling too. So that's been heavily influenced in the way that I like to see wrestling presented. And that was the opening of it. Like, holy shit, they're not going to actually shoot them, but the fact that they're going there, it makes it feel like a movie. And that's what I liked about the film and gun situation.
I would pay money to see a Scott Steiner versus Nate match on the wrestling show.
Oh, man, I would pay money. I wonder how much Scott Steiner's charging for ass whoopings this time of year.
I have a fan question on Facebook. They asked me, Tad asked Matt, so what would you do? What would you do if Scott Steiner came to the wrestling show and tried to mess with Kate?
Well, first of all, I know that Kate can handle her own. So I would probably grab the camera, tell Scott Steiner to get Kate in the ring, and try to get her in a Steiner recliner and see how that works out for him. And if he got the advantage on Kate, I would probably grab one of the 4 sledgehammers I have placed in the gym and knock him out with it.
Yeah, Kate, I mean, she is a pretty damn good wrestler with the wrestling show. And there is a reason she's called Low Blows Kate Jones. She uses her, there's more ways to win than just.
You know what they should do? You know what you should call Kate? The new dirtiest player in the game. Because she's that Ric Flair low blow and
the ultimate dirtiest player. I'll work on it. I'll come up with something, babe. Get your notepad out. We need some synonyms for dirty. Yeah. Filthy. Raunchy. The raunchiest player in the game.
That's good.
But then in the Attitude Era, we ended up getting the real good women's wrestling. Like, you know, at first we had Sable as the women's champion, but Sable was just Sable. But then we started getting the Litas. We started getting the Trish Stratus, the Victorias of the world. Do you think that women's wrestling is better than the women's wrestling we get now? Or do you think the women's wrestling now is better than what it was at the Attitude Era?
Oh, that's a good question.
Well, during the Attitude Era, your guys' camp had WWF beat by a mile in regards to women's wrestling. Like women like Daphne and Medusa. I mean, like, because Molly Holly was originally part of Macho Man's faction. So you guys had, the WCW had all the great women's talent. At that point, Vince McMahon was still titties, chocolate titties. Like all he wanted was boobs. You know what I mean? And like he even paid Miss Jacqueline extra money to take her to show her tits that one time on that pay-per-view.
Yep, I remember.
Yep.
But women's wrestling on a national level nowadays, indie level is totally different. If you see indie female wrestling, you'll be blown away. Indie female wrestlers are amazing. But on a national level, I think they do too much to try to get attention with moves rather than sticking to moves. Like Britt Baker is awesome because she kind of sticks to like a calling spot formula where she knows maneuvers and she doesn't try to do flips. I bring up this point because did you recently see the footage of that Ty Conti Bunny match where she almost literally killed Bunny doing a move she didn't even have to do for the story of the match?
I did not.
She put Bunny on a table and tried to do a moonsault onto her from the ring. But she, of course, it's high risk. You don't need to do it. There was no need for it. To make a long story short, the meaty part of her thigh landed on Bunny's face. And when you watch the replay, Bunny's face like squishes. Like I didn't know how she didn't like cave in her skull.
Wow.
And one thing too about the indie women's wrestling, I've actually seen some of them on there that wrestle from Impact, and then I see their indie wrestling matches, and you're like, they were better there than they were on TV. And
the indie women's wrestling is awesome. Like I almost like it better because they're calling spots in the ring. You can as a trained wrestler, you can tell when somebody's calling spots. So you can tell they're calling spots in the ring and they don't have this shit memorized. It's awesome. There's a girl named, I think it's something Slamovich, who just came up from the indies to TNA.
yeah.
She's somebody to watch.
Now, when you guys watched women's wrestling back in the Attitude Era, who was y'all's girl? Was it Trish or Lita?
Oh man, I'm gonna have to go with Trish. You know, Lita was a little rough for me, I guess. Trish had the cowgirl hat and the boots and shit like that, and she could actually do like bouncing off the ropes with the head scissors. I don't know. She could do the flips. Lita was more of like, I don't know, one of the guy wrestlers in my opinion.
See, I was a Lita fan just because of the thong, man. That thong sticking up over the jeans, it's like...
Yeah, I mean, that was the one nice attribute I felt like she had. She had that big-ass tattoo on her shoulder, too, of like a pineapple or something. I can't even remember what it was at this point in time, but it's a little much.
A lot of people didn't know this, but there's a video online, and I will post it below for everybody. Do you know that Victoria's Widow's Peak has never been kicked out? No one's never kicked out of her move.
Man, I want to say that I did see a meme or something about that, to be honest with you. Or maybe she had said something about it. Yeah, that's a devastating move.
That's actually one of the smartest things you can do as a performer. Like that, a lot of performers have different signature holds just because to have something like that, the Widow's Peak, you want there to be a suspension of disbelief when you apply that maneuver. So the fact that it has that reputation of nobody kicking out of it, and there's people who have submission holds who nobody's tapped out of. When that's applied, that adds a level of emotion to the match that you can't fake, So I think that's awesome because she does have a second finisher. She has that spiderweb moonsault thing that she does.
She does she does that little booty pop and then she does the moonsault with it.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I was more of a Lita guy. I like Trish, but I kind of have to agree with Xavier on that. It was seeing her with the Hardys, which leads me into my next discussion with you guys. The Hardy Boys, Edge and Christian, and the Dudleys. Would you say that their WrestleMania match was probably the greatest tag team wrestling that we've seen?
The 3-way ladder match.
Yeah, the TLC one they did.
Yeah. I think anytime those three guys did tag team matches together, even though it was more like a trio team because there was 3 teams mixed together, it wasn't traditional tag team style rules. It was something that we'd never seen before and can probably never be replicated again. Magic.
So Josh and I call that match Pandora's Box.
There you go.
Because, just like with Pandora's Box, once you open it, you can't ever fucking shut it ever again.
Yep.
It was awesome seeing that the first time at WrestleMania, but that match inspired so many of these flippy floppy guys nowadays that it's like, that's why a lot of that high flying stuff was censored during the New Generation and Attitude Era, is because they were afraid that if too much of it was shown, that would just become the product. And it got over, don't get me wrong. And I loved that match and I loved the subsequent matches. But yeah, that I think is one of the turning points with wrestling was that first TLC match. It was at WrestleMania 2000.
I believe, yeah.
It was WrestleMania 2000. Then they did one at SummerSlam, and then they did it at WrestleMania 17.
And 17 is the one where Jeff took the unnecessary bump, right? The 77-foot ladder that almost touched the ceiling.
That was also the one where he's holding on to that, and Edge jumps off the top and spears him off the top of the.
Those two bastards are lucky, and Edge even talks about it because they had the gods were with them. Because if either one of those two would have rotated any further, the bump would have went horribly, horribly wrong.
Yeah, how you spear somebody off of a ladder through midair who's hanging on to a belt and don't kill each other, that was, the gods were with them. It's a good way to put it, bro. I still, to this day, that's one of the most jaw-dropping things you can see when you Google WWE.
Yeah, that's an awesome moment.
Yeah.
Now, we can't talk about the Attitude Era, but not talk about the rise of Dwayne Johnson, The Rock. Comes in as Rocky Maivia, gets hurt, joins the Nation of Domination. When he was a part of Nation of Domination before he became a part of the corporation, did you guys see potential in The Rock right then?
I will say this. When he debuted at SummerSlam, 96, fuck no. I was like, why are they trying to sell us on some 1988 smile at me, high five me type of dude? He looks stupid. That was my first response to Rocky Maivia.
Yeah, I thought he was going to be a jobber. He was just going to come in and flip, flop, and fly and be out, gone quicker than he even came in. That was my first thought.
Now, when he joined the Nation, did you guys start seeing the potential in The Rock?
When he started feuding with Farouk, as soon as I realized he was going to be the one to go against the leader, I was like, oh, shit. I didn't think about this, but, The Rock's going to be the next guy to stand up and take over the Nation was kind of what I was thinking was going to happen. Yeah, I guess that's when he really caught my attention.
I think I kind of knew he was going to be bigger when him and Triple H had that ladder match at SummerSlam. What was it, SummerSlam 98?
The Intercontinental title one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a damn good match. And
that is.
That's back when The Rock's, still would do moves rather than how Vince relegates all of his top stars to their 5 moves of doom. It's pick 5 moves and just do those. But in that match, Rock was really showing his versatility. So what do you guys think? Let me ask you two this question. What do you think if Rock would have jumped ship in 99?
Tables would be totally different. I say Rock would have still gone Hollywood And that would have been even better business for TNT, who's already in the TV business.
If he would have jumped ship back in '99, I feel like we would still have WCW here today on TV. We wouldn't be having AEW. I think the guys in AEW would be on WCW.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think that would be where we'd be at. And I think Bischoff would still be in charge.
Yeah.
What's going on?
Because that Russo thing was a terrible, terrible failed experiment.
Yeah.
I felt like it with WCW. Now, let me ask you guys this one. What would have happened if Undertaker would have jumped ship back in the biker gimmick?
They would have done the same thing with Bret Hart as they would have done with The Undertaker. He ain't The Rock. Without a good booker, Undertaker is just Mark.
Yeah. Yeah, if they couldn't have used The Undertaker and he would have came in as Mark Calloway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because look at, I don't know. That's a hard one to call because he has so much charisma and the fans, you know what I mean? He has instant recognizability, which is a good thing as a booker. But yeah, I think Matt has a point there. As much as I hate to say that, they would have turned him back. I think they would have brought back the Skyscrapers, to be honest with you, and put him together with Sid Vicious.
Now, you know what's interesting too is when I started noticing the potential of The Rock at that SummerSlam match with the ladder match, but when he was in that IC title feud with Stone Cold and he had that text saying Austin 316 and how he would go, him and Austin for some reason knew how to relegate to each other. I don't know if it was just great chemistry between the two of them. But I think what really brought The Rock out is when he joined Fate, when he left the Nation, he turned face, and in that Survivor Series they did the screw job on Mick Foley, and he joined the corporation. When he started coming out calling people a Rudy Poo, candy ass, and he looked at Big Show and he went like, "You 500-pound steaming bag of monkey crap," and you started seeing that, you're like, this dude's awesome. There's no way of beating him on the mic now.
Rock. Yeah, go ahead, Matt.
I was going to say, he made you hate him. You know, he did what he was supposed to do on the microphone, and he got the whole crowd hot. But then those same fans that he got hot, he taught them all of his catchphrases, and by the end of it, they were all screaming louder than he was. So he definitely was able to capture lightning in a bottle. And, it speaks volumes about him and where he's at today.
Yeah, and if you're good on the microphone and you can connect to the fans verbally, you don't need to do a lot of high flying shit in the ring for the awe factor. You know, they're going to want to watch you wrestle because you can connect to them vocally, and that's what he had going for him.
Mm-hmm. Good point.
That's what happened with one of my friends who lives in Chattanooga now. He was a indie wrestler, but he was a high flyer, and I went to a couple of his matches and I put him aside. I said, "Look, man, you're killing yourself in the ring. Yeah, you're death-defying gravity. But if you only drop one elbow and you basically go like, what do you think of him? Instead of dropping like 5 or 6, 7 of them, you'd be beating yourself up over nothing. So you got to have that crowd at the palm of your hand."
So when do you guys think the Attitude Era ended?
We were trying to say John Cena, I think, was the end of the Attitude Era. When he and those guys from OVW came into WWE, that was when the Ruthless Aggression Era started, which would, in my opinion, then be the end of, since there was no off season, the Attitude Era.
Yeah.
I would say the real time the Attitude Era ended is when Austin had to retire at WrestleMania 19. I think that's when it really kind of, because Austin was the poster boy for the Attitude Era.
Pulse. You're right. He was the pulse.
So once Austin's gone and he's basically like, even though they have him as a GM, when Austin basically retired, that was kind of like, he still had The Rock, but The Rock was more Hollywood now. So you're kind of like, you have all these younger guys like Cena, Batista, Brock Lesnar, Randy Orton, which I have never seen a draft class like that ever since then come out of WWE.
Yeah,
those four were
miraculous.
amazing.
Both guys all came up and trained together. I don't know.
Well, the reason why for that in WWE now is they hire based on look rather than on ability. So a lot of those guys were athletes. In fact, all those guys were athletes. They weren't either models or somebody who are using WWF or WWE as a springboard to get into movies or whatever. You know, it's hard to teach an athlete this business. I mean, a non-athlete this business, because there's a level of teamwork that you need to understand, even though you're an individual superstar. But going back to what the end of the era, I think it was that night on Nitro when Shane came out and said he bought WCW. Because at least in my mind, I was like, all right, it's over. I mean, they don't have to be cocky. Vince owns everything now. So he doesn't have to try. There's no one-upsmanship of who's going to like say the word penis more, or there might be a nipple slip on this station, you know.
Yeah, and they still tried to keep that feud going with the Monday Night Wars, even on WWE. We were talking about that earlier, too. And, like, I think that it just needed to end. You know, like that stretch out of it, especially when they screwed it up. They should have just ended it right there. And
see,
then
the big problem in my mind, Matt, with that is they got the undercard on TV. Like, they should have waited for a year for all those guys' money contracts to expire. So when they did the invasion angle, they could have had Hall, Nash, Hogan, Sting, you know, everybody, because as great as the undercard was, it's not believable that a guy like Mike Awesome is going to totally decimate Steve Austin and The Rock. There's no believability in that.
Yeah, they haven't built it up at all.
Right.
They could have definitely taken a break with the guys from WCW and brought them in maybe one at a time, until the contracts were all up and then a big swarm of them show up. Yeah, they dropped the ball on that. So that is a good way to end the Attitude Era. You know,
when they brought in those guys from WCW and ECW, don't you think they kind of screwed Page by making him the stalker of Undertaker's wife at the time? That was like really bad for Page.
Yeah,
that was kind of a little bit of a career killer.
Yeah, they took one of the hottest stars and put him in the worst storyline possible, but with one of their biggest characters. You know, I mean, they put Booker T with The Rock, and then they put DDP with The Undertaker. So, I mean, they had good ideas there, but just, the story they decided to give in the character when Page already had such a good character. Why change him up, cut his hair, put him in baggy pants with earrings, and make him be a stalker? You know, he should have came out going bang with his taped up ribs, going after Taker that way because he wanted to be the better wrestler or the better big guy in the business, you know, instead of making him be a creep, which didn't make any sense.
I was reading something that DDP and The Rock actually did talk when he signed. They really wanted to do a people versus people champion thing, but never got a chance to do it.
Yeah, you're right, because I believe The Rock or DDP was the first person to coin being the people's champion.
Mm-hmm.
We got JB in the house.
Here's my boy.
Says the invasion could have been so much better. Yeah, it could have been. They could have let it build up instead of just right at the beginning.
They didn't really need the ECW guys involved in it, but I understood why they did it, because they didn't have enough stars. And Buff Bagwell didn't fit in with what WWE was doing, which was another thing. Because I actually did like Bagwell. I thought he could. I mean, but they didn't give WCW. I feel like they didn't give WCW enough time. But I feel like now you got Raw versus SmackDown. I wish that they would just make a Nitro, like a Raw versus Nitro thing still. But I don't think they would ever do that, though.
Yeah, I don't know if they could bring back the same idea. They try to capture it. That's still what they're doing. Is they're trying to capture the Raw versus Nitro with SmackDown. And it's just like it's lost the appeal back when the Monday Night Wars were over with back in 2000. You know, and they're still trying to do the same storyline with what show gets better ratings, what show has the better stars. They still do Survivor Series, Raw versus SmackDown. You know, like it doesn't make any sense for the company to be competing with itself. And been the running storyline for WWE now for the last 20 years. Is it going to be
Here's
Raw?
here's a good one for you guys. If the invasion angle would have happened the way we all wanted it, who would have booked against who?
They should have gone Goldberg versus Austin. You know, why they didn't ever do that? That would have been money. And I like The Rock versus Booker T. Honestly, you know, they did get that one right.
What do you think? What do you think, Xavier?
I definitely would have wanted to see Undertaker and Sting. I think that's a match we've been robbed of from history.
Yeah.
But Stone Cold and Hogan would have been a great match. I don't know if was there really ever an antithesis in WCW for The Rock? The Rock was just kind of like an overwhelming presence. I don't know if WCW really had a presence that was similar to The Rock. Although a Rock Goldberg, did that ever happen?
Yes,
Yeah.
it did.
Rock Goldberg
That was Goldberg's first match.
Yes, it was. That was when Goldberg came out, was to come after The Rock.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, which was great. That was the only guy who probably had any type of the same fandom as Goldberg.
The one person on WCW I felt like could have probably had fun. It would have been a fun promo battle back and forth. Is Scott Steiner and The Rock.
Yeah,
That would have been a little fun promo.
that would have been hilarious.
Because you would have had Medeja with him, and he would have been like, "Who in the blue hell are you?"
Oh yeah, Mike's talking about all the guys that wanted to keep all their contracts. Yeah, why wouldn't those guys want to stay home and make all that money?
Yeah, and that's what Matt and I were just talking about. If WWF would have waited till that stopped, until their money contract stopped, the invasion angle would have been 10 times better.
Yeah, WWE's got a tendency to just jump ahead of the gun sometimes. They could definitely stretch out the storylines that need to be stretched out and not just push on the next week. What's the most exciting thing we can do this week? They live too much in the moment, and it's been showing ever since this.
They could have waited too, because we could have saw in 2002, Shawn Michaels came back. We could have had Triple H and Shawn Michaels DX versus the Outsiders.
Wow, that would have been a fucking amazing match.
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
We could have had that, and they screwed that one too. Now, Undertaker claims that he's never heard anything about him and Sting. He was never against it. He was against it when they got older, because obviously
they could have had a cinematic match with The Undertaker and Sting. I don't know why they decided to put Sting in a match against Triple H and have him lose.
And why would you have the NWO help Sting too? Why would you have the NWO help Sting?
That was the dumbest fucking shit. I don't get it. I thought the NWO was going to come out and beat Sting's ass. It didn't make any sense at all. We got a really funny meme afterward when Sting's makeup's all messed up and his hair standing straight up. You guys have all seen that about the old school WCW guys, but they really dropped the ball on Sting's comeback, and then they put him in a match with Seth Rollins next, and Seth Rollins breaks him. It's like, well, there goes your Sting opportunity. I wonder why he didn't go there all those years. He thought you guys would book him badly. Well, he was right.
Well, we could have had a Sting Undertaker thing. Apparently, Sting said right before he signed with AEW, he did call Vince and said, "Hey, can I do a cinematic with Undertaker?" And this is before Undertaker did it with AJ.
Wow.
And they said no, and that's when he went, "Okay, well, I'm just going to go elsewhere."
Yeah.
I mean,
Dude,
and Sting's proven in AEW that he can still do it. So
that Boneyard match is one of the best cinematic matches that was ever filmed. I love that Boneyard match.
It could have lasted forever.
Yeah.
So I thought it was too short. It could have lasted longer. They could have burnt more buildings down. I thought it was amazing. I was waiting for Kane to show up, bro. I thought for sure that Kane was going to come out of that burned building, or Paul Bearer was going to come back, or like why they didn't cash in on more of the cinematic elements that could have used in that match.
Well, that's right, because he had the Good Brothers they were still under contract at that time because they were in the match.
Yeah. So Kane should have showed up and beat the shit out of him, but you can't have
the one thing I thought was another cinematic match that was great. The jump started it all was when you see the final deletion in TNA with the Hardys and
The
the
Briscoes,
K
right?
and the K
Oh,
with Abyss and all them. Yeah,
Yep.
that was actually pretty cool.
I've
That's what
not
kind of
seen-
really jump started it.
no, I like that. And like that version of Matt Hardy is one of the funniest versions of a wrestler I've ever seen ever.
Yes.
Yeah, he is pretty funny.
But the biggest thing too with this whole Attitude Era, and this is the one thing that a friend of mine wanted me to touch in with you guys about was the wrestling then compared to now, because wrestling you see now, everybody's kicking out of everything, like the Canadian Destroyer, they're kicking out of this, they're kicking out of that. And the Attitude Era, they only kicked out during the pay-per-views or real big matches. They didn't really kick out during Raw and SmackDown.
That's a great point.
Do you think that wrestling was actually better pound for pound, like more athletic back then, or do you think we got more better wrestlers now, but the wrestling was just a lot cooler then?
Well, I'm going to say, let me just say that you got more matches in when they got over with the finish, like on a Raw or on a Shotgun Saturday Night. So I did like that from a wrestling standpoint. Sitting at home watching it, oh shit, this match is going to be over with that, and then what's the next one? And then going into the pay-per-views that you're going to have longer matches. So I feel like then when the guy kicks out, you expect it. So if you're hanging the drama in different ways based on how long the fans know the show is going to last for. So it's good when used in the right way.
Yeah, I think it goes back a little bit to that Pandora's box example I used at WrestleMania 2000. It's all what you train your fan base to expect. So seeing the people kicking out of Canadian Destroyers and finishers not being protected, I think that's why there is so many high spots, especially in AEW. Because in a lot of other federations, whether it be I'm blanking, MLW, TNA, there's a lot of people that have protected finishers yet that aren't kicking out of anything. But I mean, let's say let's say for instance, Matt's in AEW and he uses the rock bottom. Well, everybody should kick out of the rock bottom because people are kicking out of the fucking Canadian Destroyer, which looks 10 times worse than the rock bottom. Like, I just don't get why they allow moves like the Canadian Destroyer to be constantly used. They're training their fan base to expect kickouts.
Yep.
Man, yeah, that's a really good point.
Well, I can tell you this much about AEW. Go ahead, Matt. Sorry.
So yeah, the matches go on too long because all these guys want to go out there and just show off for each other. Don't need to be that way. The matches don't need to go on for 3 or 4 commercial breaks, and then we're hitting 3 or 4 Canadian Destroyers in the matches. You're letting the fans just suspend their belief way too much.
Yep.
There's no way that any of these matches are going to make sense if anything can happen in all of them. There's got to be some type of structure, and yeah, there's got to be some moves that if you get knocked down, I know Josh says this a lot, you got to sell the big moves or else none of the stuff's going to make any sense, and it's really, really important, especially from a fan's perspective. If people keep on kicking out of these moves, these matches are lasting 10 minutes, it's not a real fight. There's no way it would be a real fight. It lasts longer than 10 minutes and they go out in a commercial a couple different times. It just you got to be in imagination land for way too long.
Well, it'd be like if I got in the ring with one of you guys, if it's just like an actual wrestling show, yeah, I'm not going to do all my moveset. But if it's like YouTube Mania, absolutely, we're going to throw everything out the window and we're going to have fun with it and try to kick out of stuff. I can understand it for a pay-per-view, and that's why Austin always said that wrestling needs to slow down now. Like a lot of the guys from WWE, AEW need to slow it down. And I know I'm going to get some hate from AEW fans, but I think the Young Bucks are overrated. Sorry.
Yeah. I mean, unless you like midget tag team wrestling, the Young Bucks are just average to me. They're funny. I like the way they dance down to the ring. Then sometimes they have cool shoes. But as far as being big wrestling stars, it's unbelievable because there's no team of 2 other guys that could not beat them because they're so small. And if they jump, you could be able to catch them and throw them in the air. It's just their finishing move is so unbelievable to do. That melts their driver. Like, you got to hold the other guy upside down long enough for the other guy to go bounce and do a bunch of flips and barely touch you. Like, it's I don't know, bro. The setup for their stuff, the kissing Adam Cole, it's just way too much for me. It's too unbelievable. You got to go into some other imagination to believe this shit's a real fight.
So Michael says that the Hardy Boys are overrated.
I mean, I would say that about Matt Hardy's wrestling and in-ring skills. Jeff Hardy, he's his own worst enemy, but in my opinion, is underrated. I think Jeff could have gone so much farther in life, but he let his demons kind of get to him. But in the matches where he does throw caution to the wind, and he is the Jeff Hardy that we all have grown up to like he is one of the best performers, and I see why they gave him the belts as many times as they have, because he's got the potential. But yeah, as far as a tag team, he's the one that shines with those 2.
I mean, the thing with Jeff Hardy, I love Jeff Hardy, and they booked him the right way. So yes, Matt's right. He was underrated because, like, he was always a little guy. Now the guys Jeff Hardy size are the norm in pro wrestling. But back in that day, they weren't. But that first major win he had over Undertaker was absolutely mind-blowing because they booked it correctly. You know what I mean? Because there's no way he'd beat the Undertaker, obviously. Undertaker's huge, but the way in which he beat the Undertaker elevated his career, and my God, they didn't do the same thing with Matt Hardy, though, and that's why Matt's career kind of stagnated.
Yeah, Matt got too hung up on Lita and Edge to ever have a real wrestling career. He let that overtake him in a weird way. And yeah, it's just
do you think a guy like CM Punk would have survived the Attitude Era, or do you think he would have been a main event guy, or you think he just would have been a mid-card? Or
from what I hear of I've never worked with CM Punk. I've never been backstage of an arena with CM Punk, but from what I hear from other workers on the indie scene who've been around him, he probably wouldn't have, because he's very political backstage. And from what I've gathered from reading during the Attitude Era, if you are too much of a politician backstage, you are going to get the ire of guys like the Undertaker and some of the other locker room leaders like Kevin Nash on the WCW side. Being too much of a politician was bad during the Attitude Era.
I think being too much of a politician is going to be bad at all points in time. So yeah, CM Punk would definitely not have gone over well, I don't think, with those guys. He's just not. He's a different breed. He tried to emulate what they did in his era of wrestling to the point where he would have been ahead of his time if he was in the Attitude Era, and he wouldn't have gotten along well with him.
So if we're speaking Attitude Era, I know we saw Brock during the now and the Ruthless Aggression, but do you think Brock would have been a main event guy in the Attitude Era?
I think any era Brock was in. Brock has the look that gets Vince McMahon hard. I mean, that's just the type of guy that gives Vince McMahon a boner. But the thing with Brock too, besides that look, is he has unbelievable athletic ability. Like, he is just a monster.
Yeah. He could do a shooting star press, break his neck, and still F5 Kurt Angle in a main event at WrestleMania.
The fucked up thing about that is I was at WrestleMania 19, and when he did that, you could see it we were in the first elevated seats.
Oh, God.
And dude, the angle we were at, I honestly thought we watched a guy die.
Oh, jeez. I don't mean to laugh, but yeah. Fuck, that was.
But the weird thing is in OVW, he did that constantly. He could hit that perfectly, but it was his nerves. His nerves got the better of him that night.
And he hadn't done it in a while. I don't think he ever did it in WWE.
He did it during OVW. OVW, he did it a lot.
Was that ring the same size, though? I mean, was everything the same about it? I bet you there was something that must have been a little bit off for him.
Yeah, the WWE ring is a little harder. I think the ropes are a little looser, too. judging by the way, between the TWS ring and the WWE ring, like it's more difficult, like to do with the Andre tie-up.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So I think the ropes were a little different, but when it comes to those high risk moves, like if you're nervous and you double think that high risk move, you're going to fuck up.
Yeah, that's a good point.
You just got to get up and do it and rely on your instinct.
Yeah, if you try to think about it too much, you're going to overthink it. That's probably what he did.
Now, the Brock that we're seeing now, I absolutely love the Brock that we're seeing now. And the Brock we're seeing now is kind of like the 2003 Brock where he's over there facing Eddie Guerrero, dancing with the sombrero and doing all this. I mean, we're seeing Brock as an entertaining guy, actually. So.
And his look is awesome, like with the ponytail and the goatee and like bringing out a flip phone and acting like, like look at this buck I just caught. Like, my God, I actually do give it credit. I love current WWE Brock.
Yes, me too.
My favorite promo of his so far is in Philadelphia, home of ECW. He looks at Paul Heyman and goes, I got a knock-knock joke. Heyman's like, oh, my God, Brock's got a knock-knock joke. I've heard it all now. And he goes, knock-knock, who's there? Bobby. Bobby who? He went, exactly.
Yeah, I heard that. That was good. That was good. I think Brock's going to whoop Bobby Lashley's ass at the Royal Rumble. I don't think Lashley's got a prayer in this match. Unfortunately, I don't know. Goldberg should have came back and whooped Bobby, so I feel like he's got one coming, and he's going to get it at the Rumble.
You know what's really sad about that Goldberg-Bobby match at Crown Jewel is that a 50-something-year-old man on a 20-foot thing could spear him through a table, but Cody Rhodes couldn't do a suplex through a burning table.
Oh, my God. Did you see Cody Rhodes' back?
Yeah.
He's still healing from that.
He said it was the dumbest thing he'd ever done. Like what you were saying earlier, Jay, about just unnecessary dangers.
Yeah.
That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen along those lines. And his back is proof of that. Like, why?
That flaming table spot is something that should have been relegated to like their biggest show of the year, the blow off of the biggest feud he's ever had in his entire career. You know what I mean?
Yeah, not just for ratings on a Wednesday night.
Yeah.
Bad.
And one thing I will say too is that there's a lot of things that we can cover with the Attitude Era, but that would take like 4 hours, maybe 5. But I will say this though about the Attitude. What's that?
I got to pick up my son pretty soon from school.
Yeah, no, we're gonna. So what I'll say about this. So what I'll say about this about the Attitude Era is that for you fans out there who thinks, and there's some fans out there that think that AEW is going to jumpstart this new war between WWE and AEW. You're never going to see another Monday Night War like that ever again.
Yeah.
And the reason why, this is my opinion, if you guys agree or disagree, is that first Monday Night War, the Attitude Era, happened organically. You couldn't plan it. It wasn't planned. And that's when the best feuds and the best matches happen, is when it's all done organically. Because like you never would have thought when the outsiders jumped ship that it was going to spawn the birth of Mr. McMahon, which would have given the rise to Austin, to the rise of Goldberg, to all this other shit that added to the Monday Night Wars in the Attitude Era.
Yeah, right now it's just going to be copying what they already did. And I don't see the fans flip-flopping back and forth on channels. Now with DVRs anyway, and YouTube and Twitter, everybody can figure out all the information on the wrestling that they already want. So I don't think it's ever going to be the way that it was.
My opinion, is never going to be the same because, like you said, there's so many websites now. People are also cutting the cable, and they got streaming devices. There's so many dirt sheets that you can go to now and look. I mean, kudos to WWE at the Royal Rumble in 2020, keeping Edge's return a secret. I give them credit for that because because that's the part that's missing in wrestling is the secret. Like they kept saying all summer long last year that Punk's going to sign, Bryan's going to sign, this guy's going to sign. So when Punk showed up, I'm like, I was happy, but I was like, I knew this was going to happen. So,
yeah, the internet takes away the mystique and prestige factor. There's no longer a kayfabe anymore. It's just all out in the open.
so before I end this show, I'm just going to say, guys, what if Matt Jones, Superstar Xavier Mykeals, and Big Kev joined forces and took over the wrestling show?
An awful lot of ifs in that sentence. But,
Look, Kev, I know you and I could take over the wrestling show.
you guys could try, but I think that's already been done a few times before, and we're not trying to keep on doing the same old tired storylines. So good luck. Good luck. But maybe we can create some type of new lightning in a bottle and go against the television wrestling show. You know, that's my biggest goal with the wrestling show. And if you guys are going to be helping us out, that's the goal and the vision, is to have the internet take over the television, you know, the streaming devices and all that stuff. You know, cable is the way of the past. That's the old way of getting your wrestling show. We want people to go to the internet, the YouTube, to get their wrestling show instead of having to sign up for cable or Peacock or whatever. So if you want to take over the wrestling, take it over by making your own way. We're making our own path with the wrestling show here. So
now, a fan asked us a question here, Xavier, to you on Facebook, was asking, is Kate ducking the insane Courtney Peterson?
I don't know. They've tangled quite a few times. Like we've said, Courtney, that's a question for Courtney. I let her speak for herself. I
say check him out on Patreon, but I do got to get out of here. It's time for me to go get my boy from school. So thank you all so much. May the force be with you all. Peace.
All right. But yeah, there is some good stuff coming up with Courtney and Kate. I did finish Courtney's training. So there's some moves that I have personally taught Courtney that Kate hasn't seen yet.
I've also been sending her some moves that she can do in the ring through video. And so yeah, I've been helping Courtney too a little bit.
Excellent, Kev. Yeah, this was great because it's always nice, because Matt's a little younger than the both of us. So it's nice to get like the viewpoint of people who are, of that different age bracket for the Attitude Era. Because I really think the Attitude Era is, if that never would have happened, I think wrestling would have died.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think we would have saw the death of the wrestling, and it probably would be going back. I wouldn't be surprised if it went back to the old glory days where it would just be territory.
Exactly. No, honestly, because everything was getting so fucked up, syndication wise, and people were just so sick of the same old of seeing like a plumber fight a garbage man that it would almost have been better going back to the Carney days. But this has been a blast because I was a WWF guy, man.
If Hogan didn't turn heel and the NWO wasn't formed, WCW, I feel like, would have been out of business early than that.
That was the match to the powder keg, because if that wouldn't have happened, we wouldn't have had an Attitude Era. Because then Vince wouldn't have had to step up his game. There's a lot of stuff that happened that if it wouldn't have happened in that order, that there wouldn't have been like the Attitude Era as we know it.
Well, the next couple of things I want to try to do is do some maybe wrestler bios and talk about their feuds and their career. I feel like that would be something that we could try to do.
That'd be awesome.
Because I feel like in a lot of cases, though, with the wrestling, I could do a ruthless aggression thing too, but which probably will happen. I just think that it was good to have Matt in here to hear his perspective. And yeah, Matt, I'm just going to go ahead and clarify it, though. I mean, you and Kate sent a nice gift to me and Mel, but as I could tell you, and as I told the Superstar, not to quote Sting, but I gotta quote him, I may or may not be in your price range. But the only thing that's sure about Kev is nothing's for sure.
Well, the offer always stands, brother, and I'll keep doing these shows with you, no matter your decision, because this has been a blast.
All right, guys. This is Big Kev with Superstar Xavier Mykeals. I was with Matt Jones earlier. They filmed the Screw City Rumble, which I think is coming soon, right? Screw City Rumble's coming soon.
I believe it debuts it debuts the same day on YouTube as the WWF Royal Rumble.
So you guys go over to the wrestling show, watch it. They spent the whole entire day on that thing. The men and women worked very hard. So I've always said about wrestling fans, you can complain about wrestling, but until you get into that ring and you feel that ropes and you feel that, you can't really complain until you actually get in there.
No, and there is actually a bonus special match before the Rumble that was filmed live, authorized by the promoter, one of the commissioners, Vinny Boombots, and it's going to be the name versus career. I put my career on the line, so you guys don't know if I'm an actual full-time wrestler right now, because there was a match filmed between me and Patrick McMichaels, so you'll have to watch that as well, in addition to one of the best Rumbles I've participated in.
I'm looking forward to the Patrick McMichaels thing because he actually messaged me on Facebook and he seems like a cool dude. So I don't know, maybe he wants Big Kev services too. I don't know. Maybe that's I don't know. I mean, like when you're a free agent, you're a hot commodity. But I would like to say, Nate, thank you for the money, but I'm going to spend it wisely. But I'm still not going to join you because I still feel like you're a piece of crap.
Hey,
and you don't deserve to wear that Galactic Championship belt. I'm so afraid to say that.
He treats everybody. That's just our champion, man. Backstage, when we get to craft services, he makes sure none of us get any of the good food. I mean, that's Nate the Great.
But I will tell you this, Nate. Be lucky that I couldn't make it for the Screw City Rumble, because I guarantee you would have went over that. You would have went over that top rope, and you would have went over it hard.
Damn right, man.
All right, guys. But thank you for the comments. Thank you guys for joining in here. Later on, guys, if you see this, I know some fans are fans of the Attitude Era. You see this later, post your comments down below. Tell us some of your favorite Attitude Era Monday Night War moments. We told you some of ours. Like I said, we could cover this whole thing, but it would take like 4 to 5 hours. I think the Golden Era would have took longer than that.
Oh yeah.
But I might do a Golden Era too, because I didn't really get a chance to talk about the Royal Rumble, 92 Royal Rumble. Someone told me that.
Oh shit, we totally spaced that out.
We totally spaced that one out, and one of my buddies was like, "Hey, you forgot about the Rumble 92." I went, "Oh, shh. I didn't even realize that." Okay, well, yeah. But anyways, guys, thanks, Xavier. Thanks to Matt Jones. This has been fun. This has been great. We're going to keep trying to do these things a little bit more often here because this is just really cool. And I know you're building your YouTube channel, right?
Yes. It's going to be called Naked at 9, and more on Naked at 9 when I'm legally able to talk about it.
All right, guys. See y'all later. Like, share, subscribe. And remember, it was just too sweet.